And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Soul Survivor podcast. Here to recap episode 2 of Survivor 46. And once again, with me, I have Brett. Brett, how's it going?
Good, Ryan. I'm happy we were able to get this in. I know it was very tough for us, very busy these last couple of days, but yeah, happy to talk about it. I had to refresh myself on the episode because we were talking 2-hour episode. And it felt it as well. I don't know what you thought, but I mean, you felt all 2 hours of it. So had to go back because we only got into 2-hour episode. Normally you think we'd get a double elimination or something, 2 tribals, but only 1 tribal. A very, very interesting episode. I definitely have some thoughts on it. Very strange episode in my opinion, but yeah, it should be fun.
Yeah, no, 2-hour episode. It really felt it this week. The first week I was like, okay, it's fine. It's the premiere. We have to meet everybody. We have to kind of set up where each alliance is on each tribe. So I didn't mind the 2 hours. Love a good long premiere. Love a good long finale. Then I heard that this week was going to be 2 hours. And I said, okay, well, maybe they have a lot of good content. I know CBS has to fill the gap somewhere for certain shows and whatnot. And this episode, like you said, I really felt it. The second part was better than the first, but the first part really dragged. And to your point, not even having a reward challenge or something else just to fill that time just made us kind of wanting, honestly.
Yeah, to have 1 tribal, 1 challenge on a 2-hour episode is pretty crazy. And yeah, it was just a really strange episode. I feel like, I don't know what you're kind of getting from the season so far, but I've seen comparisons to Gabon in that it is very messy and all of the there's not really a ton of game players right now that are standing out where you're like, this is a clear game player. Obviously the entire purple tribe, even the ones who are running the tribe, kind of seem messy. So the gameplay has been strange. Tribals have been strange with this purple tribe. Maybe it's just the one disaster tribe, but I don't know. It was very strange, and we're getting a big insight to them because 2 hours we got a huge in-depth look at this tribe, and they are extremely dysfunctional, Ryan.
I don't know what's in the water with these even seasons, the Tika tribe on 44 and Marianne and the crew on 42. Something is in the water with these even number seasons in the new era. But I'm excited to get into all of it with you. Quick housekeeping thing before we get to the headline of Tribal Council. So I think once again, just Dylan and I just trying to work out different schedules because he has work at nights during the week and March Madness is coming up, and then we were busy this weekend with the bachelor party. I have another bachelor party later in March. So we're going to be very on and off in terms of which days, which times. Very happy to have my friend Brett here to help me out. And I would just say between the 3 of us, me, Brett, and Dylan, and which day of the week, just stay tuned to our Twitter. And hopefully, as we get more towards the end of the season, it becomes a bit more consistent, shall we say.
All right. I'm always ready to jump in, though, Ryan. I'm always ready when you need me. Come off the bench.
Brett, listen, we've been talking Survivor since, 2013, 2012. It's been a long time since we were talking about the good old days of Kim Spradlin. A long time ago.
In high school, I think before then, no, it must have been 2011, 2010, maybe even.
Listen, obviously, we weren't talking during Heroes versus Villains, but in the early 20s, we certainly were sharing our thoughts on Survivor. So it's been a long time.
Too long. We're getting up there. I just want to jump into the episode, or?
Yeah, so the headline of tonight, before, as always, we go through the rest of the episode, is Jess. Jess, she survived episode 1, but she couldn't survive episode 2, Brett. She gets voted out here 4-1, playing a fake idol in the process that Q gave to her, and she casts the sole vote for Banu. Everyone else votes for her. Brett, I'll start with you. The obvious question, as always, was this the right move for the tribe?
Well, it was definitely the right move for Banu, obviously. I think it was ultimately, I'm not sure if I ever believe that Kenzie was ever really considered. For the rest of the tribe, I think that they were kind of overdoing Jess's weakness in the challenge. I feel like she was kind of thrown to the bus. She was put in a very tough position in that challenge, but I guess which we'll get to. But she really just, I felt bad for her actually as the episode went on. I think I was texting this during the episode, but she just doesn't seem like she was up to the challenge of going on the show. It was one of those casting decisions that just didn't work out. I think that I'm kind of right there with Liz right now as well, where she just seems like very fish out of water. But with Jess, she didn't fit in socially. She didn't seem like she understood the strategic aspect of the game. Physically, I think she was okay, but I think for me personally, if I was Q or Tiffany, I would have wanted to get rid of Banu, honestly, because he is really becoming a liability in terms of his not being able to stop talking. I think Jess, maybe you can mold a little bit more, but it wasn't a bad decision to get rid of Jess. I mean, she just was just too weak, I think, for the tribe.
Yeah, I think at this point, if you're the alliance really of Tiffany, Q, and Kenzie, I feel like was it the right move? I mean, from a standpoint of tribe strength, I feel like you have to get rid of Jess just because you can't risk losing. Now I know that we can use the argument of like the intentional matching, where it's like sometimes a decimated tribe like them, like Foa, like they can go far, which is true. But the problem is we also see times where it's like last season, Caleb and Emily go into the merge. And you think, oh, they're going to be like, the Malcolm and Denise, they're going to go far because it's just a tribe of two, and Caleb gets knocked off right away. And I feel like, sometimes the small tribe goes far and sometimes they easily get picked off. So I don't think you can risk if Jess is just like not all like if she's sleep deprived, if she's just not like focused and mentally there, then I feel like you have to just get rid of her to ensure tribe strength because Banu will at least help you in that department. Granted, we could have made the argument you could have gotten rid of her first week and kept Jelinski because with his wingspan, he would have helped you in that challenge.
Oh yeah.
But like, I think at this point, 2 episodes in, I feel like you have to just cut bait and get rid of Jess. But like you said, Brett, Banu was not doing himself any favors at all.
No, and to the point where I guess we'll get to with Tribal, but I mean, I can't believe. Actually, I'm surprised that he hasn't really been seriously considered yet because I don't know when the last time we've had someone so just brazen and like just saying whatever they think at Tribal. It's very like really before they introduced idols or anything, to where like you can kind of just say whatever you thought at Tribals. So yeah, he was a mess. But I was saying to you, Jess, it was almost like she was like a zombie, kind of going around like post immunity challenge. She was just, it wasn't even like scrambling. She was just kind of, I don't know. People were telling her things, and she was trying to figure out the idol situation and whatever. And I don't know, it just wasn't going on upstairs for her in terms of the game. And yeah, I think ultimately it's probably for the best for the season that she went out this soon, because I don't think that she had really much to offer in terms of strategic gameplay.
Yeah, I do feel a little bit bad because obviously I don't think she anticipated being that deprived out there. But I also will say from her exit press, she was never going to quit because I think she knows like how Jeff like has been reaming quitters lately. But I feel like in her mind, she was just so mentally spent where I feel like, if it ever came, let's just say the fake idol never happened. I don't even know if she would have fought that hard to save herself anyway. I think she just was kind of checked out. She probably would have been fine to have been voted out. In her exit press, she was like, yeah, like I was kind of secretly hoping like, they would just get rid of me. So she was never going to officially quit because she never wanted to do that. But like at that point in the game, she's deprived. She's obviously on the outs. She's not breaking into that 3-person group of Tiff, Kenzie, and Q. So I think she just was spent. But she could have been saved by Banu's just erratic behavior, which we will get to.
And it's crazy because literally week 1 she was saved by Jelinski, like kind of just being foolish with his decisions, with all of the, just quitting on everything. So she was almost saved again by just someone being so wildly erratic. But I guess we'll get into it. But even early on, before the immunity challenge, we see that scene of Kenzie being or kind of throwing Q under the bus, right? Or sorry, throwing Tiffany under the bus, right? And to vote out Tiffany, right?
So if you're referring to like early in the episode,
yeah.
Yeah, and I think this kind of goes to your point about like Jess just not being like focused, where Kenzie really, for a great social player that we can talk about, makes a little bit of an unforced error where she's trying to weigh her options, which you should in Survivor, but it's day 4. It's still really early, and she's going to Banu and
and
Jeff. And she's like, hey, I want to just see what you guys think about, the duo of Q and Tiff. And, maybe there's something for the 3 of us here where we can kind of, knock off a strong pair. And immediately when she turns her back, Jess is like, Kenzie's too good. We should get rid of her. It's like, if Jess, like Jess could have taken advantage of that and been like, oh, and she tried to go to Q and say, hey, Kenzie's kind of dipping your name out there. but in the end, she just couldn't get anything going. And then she even votes for Banu at tribal council. So like she had, I feel like, ways of trying to break into there, but it just was not going to work out for her.
Yeah, I guess we'll get into it more, but a better player definitely would have exploited that kind of rift between the two, and clearly Q and Kenzie see each other as threats and kind of want to get each other out. And again, being told that kind of information, someone coming to you, and then you sort of immediately, like the camera is still on them as they're walking away, and she's pointing at Banu, being like to get her out or whatever.
Yeah.
It was very strange, but also I think we have to talk about how Kenzie, very surprising to make that kind of move, especially with people that are erratic and kind of not quality players. Like you're just going to go to them and talk like it was a, as you said, very unforced error. I like the tennis reference that you kind of brought there. Big unforced error, not a forced error. She made that decision. I don't know why she did that.
So I was listening to a couple of podcasts, and Rob was talking to a couple of people like, Fishback. He was talking to Jam Jam. And I think what people were just trying to say overall was like, when you're on day 4 and you don't have a strong alliance yet, like if you're like Tevin and Soda, who have like a tight pair, you obviously know how each other thinks, what they respond with, what they kind of receive based on information. And you can kind of be a bit more free flowing with that with your number 1, if you're like a Steven and JT or whatever. I feel like if you're Kenzie and you're going to Banu and Jess, who you haven't really been like working with, and you're just throwing ideas out there, it's very risky because they could want to be like, oh, yes, we see we're on the outs, we'll pair up with you. Or like we saw, they could immediately just be like, no, she's a threat. So back to the unforced error reference, it's like, I don't know why Kenzie, who seems very socially adept at this game, naturally being a salon owner, why she's immediately trying to weigh some options and kind of ran the risk of getting in trouble. But yeah, no, I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I guess she just wanted to explore more options. I think there's that element of, again, this is a sort of new era, not just new era, but like modern Survivor sort of thing where like you feel like you have to build a resume. You feel like you have to make big moves. You feel like you have to, I don't know, get someone else before they get you. The idea of like traditional alliances have really been broken down the last 7-8 years probably of Survivor. So even though there's been no evidence, or really there's been nothing to indicate that Q is really coming after her for her, she probably just felt like, well, it might just be better off to kind of team up with these two because they need someone and they're on the bottom and like they'll want to come work with me. And I feel like, yeah, as you said, it was a very surprising move, and it could have definitely come back to haunt her. But I think Jess and Banu's both just erratic behavior, I think, is kind of saving her right now. I mean, the how erratic both Jelinski and then Jess and Banu are for this tribe have really sort of saved some of the other ones who I think have made some mistakes. We talked about Tiffany, Q making a mistake. Tiffany, I like Tiffany, but she was like crying and she was, kind of mopey and stuff. So I don't know, the whole tribe, even the strong ones on this tribe seem kind of, I don't know, not all there in terms of strategy.
Brett, I mean, I feel like this has been happening for a long time now, but every 3-tribe season, even like before the new era, like in, Matt Singh, the Brains tribe and Cagayan, like every 3-tribe season, there's always like one disaster tribe. Like it's very rare that you have a 3-tribe season where there's a tribe that all 3 tribes are even. I feel like 42 with Marianne's season, I actually went back and looked. That was the one season where all 3 tribes each lost 2 people. So they all went into the merge even, which is actually pretty, balanced. But like every other 3-tribe season in history, there's always like one just disaster tribe completely. And I think for Kenzie as well, the other thing while we're talking about Kenzie is like, I forgot that this group never saw 45. They only saw 44. So they just saw Jam Jam win. And I know you and I both like Jam Jam. We both like Carolyn, two, emotional players, but they knew how to use their emotions in a better way and not like Banu, who was just like spilling information. And they saw Jam Jam win, who's a salon owner. Jam Jam is a very social player. And even though Kenzie made her own unforced error there, we see that other scene at the beach where she doesn't know Tiff and Q are talking. And this is before Jess runs to them and Q and Tiff are like, Kenzie's just really socially good. Like, we have to watch out for her. She could be a big threat in this game. Like, should we make the move sooner than later? So they were already, before they even knew about her potential betrayal, they were already kind of like eyeing her up.
Yeah, at least I guess that's what the edit is showing. I mean, I guess
Right.
we
Yeah.
don't know whether it's before or after, but I mean, I guess either way, I guess she did read it correctly, but I think nonetheless we can agree that still the way she went about it was probably not ideal. But look, the funny thing is, I really like. I still think there's a lot of potential for her as a player in the game. I don't know, something that you noticed as well in this episode, though, Ryan, is like both her and Tiffany, and I don't know if there's anyone in any other tribes, but again, like multiple players, at least on this purple tribe, crying and sort of very down and very emotional. And again, maybe a new era thing, but again, we're getting like a lot of just like very emotional players, I feel like. And this season, I think we see it a good amount in the first 2 episodes.
Yeah. So, I feel like over time I've kind of like gotten beaten down by it, where at first I was like, oh, okay, I'm fine with them trying new things. But now at this point, I'm kind of like, it's been a lot of crying. There was a lot of crying early on in the episode. The only time that I'm okay with the crying, Brett, is when I feel like somebody's being self-aware. Okay. And what I mean by that is like Tiffany. Like, I actually didn't mind Tiffany crying that much because she wasn't just like, oh, I got out of control and, I'm upset. I liked how, as a player, she voiced like, I want to make sure that I'm not being perceived as emotional by the other people on other tribes, because they may not want to work with me. They may see me as an erratic, Black woman, and they may not want to vote for me in the end. So even though the crying did get like a little bit too much overall this episode, I can appreciate a player kind of being self-aware and being like, I don't want to come off in a bad way where I won't get allies at the merge and I won't get people to vote for me. So she's kind of seeing how her actions are being like interpreted, where we've seen like a bunch of like emotional players like in early seasons and in the past where they would have never considered like what other people think of them. They wouldn't even care. But I can appreciate someone who says like, I don't want my actions to kind of dictate how the rest of my game will go, and people may not even approach me.
Oh yeah, that's fair. And I agree with you that I did sympathize with her more, I think, than Kenzie's was very random. But yeah, I don't know if you want to just jump in to this episode, I guess maybe from the beginning. And I guess first thing is obviously we did get the opening credits back. I mean, got previous on Survivor, which is always a nice thing to get. The credits were nice. What did you think of the credits? I guess quickly.
I thought they actually were pretty good. There was a lot of I don't know if you remember from 5 days ago, the drums. I feel like there was a lot of like heavy beats, because I was trying to listen to like the main theme, and they really like went all in on the percussion this time, and I felt like it was actually kind of good.
Yeah, I thought it was good. It just literally, after it being gone for so many seasons, it's just nice to have it back, honestly. So that I do. And look, if you're gonna give us a 2-hour episode of one tribal, you can throw in the theme. I mean, so I think it's the least they could do for a 2-hour episode.
Yeah, I honestly think they're here to stay now. The only reason why it wasn't in the premiere and in last season's premiere is because I just think they want to take that extra minute or so to really give you more pieces for like introducing people. But like, I think Jeff has been on the record saying now that they're going to be sticking with like 90-minute seasons. The fans like it. They now have extra time. Why not throw us like a 1-minute intro? Because the fans love it. So I feel like it's here to stay, and I feel like it just brings us back to those good old days.
I agree. Yeah, it's important for me for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So you want to get into the tribes pre-immunity?
Yeah, I guess we'll start with Siga, because I feel like so far 2 episodes in, it's been the same thing where we've gotten the most from purple, we've gotten some interesting things from orange, and then green's just been like that one tribe where they win a lot, so that we just don't get anything from them. Because all we really saw, Brett, on the green tribe was 2 things. Number one, which I'll ask you your thoughts on this. We saw, Charlie still in the middle between the men's and the women's alliance. But instead of him just kind of contemplating to himself again, he formally goes to Maria, and they try to make a 2-person alliance, kind of like a Malcolm and Denise. And this is where we heard Charlie's thoughts last week. We heard both of their thoughts this week of like, we do see a men's group and a women's group forming, and we have the power to swing either way. If we want to go with the women because we trust them more, let's do that. But if we want to win more challenges, we got to go with Tim and Ben. So I just want to get your quick thoughts on, the potential of a Malcolm and Denise type of thing again.
Yeah, I guess not the most compelling tribe through 2 episodes, obviously, as you said, but yeah, I mean, I actually like this alliance, and Maria's been, I think, a pleasant surprise for a lot of people.
Mhm.
Very seems like a very strong older woman. So yeah, definitely some Malcolm and Denise vibes. I mean, obviously, Charlie isn't. I don't think he's Malcolm in terms of like competitions. He's not like that kind of castings
No.
for a male, but you know, I I sort of like them. It's basic, I guess, tribe dynamics, nothing too crazy, but I think in terms of who I think that they would go with, I do think that ultimately they would go with the girls because I think that I actually think Maria would probably hold more sway than Charlie in that partnership.
I would agree. I feel like Charlie, especially because he's coming in as that younger super fan player, people might be looking at him. I feel like if he's smart about this, he doesn't want to come off kind of like, the Spencer or the Carson or the guy who's gaming too hard. So I almost feel like you're right. I feel like he might say to Maria, do you have a strong preference? I don't want to push too hard. Like if you have a way you want to lean with the guys or the girls, I'm willing to go that route. And I think both of us, other than this next segment, I think both of us kind of do like Charlie a little bit more than we had expected, because I also liked him verbalizing in confessional, Brett, where he was like, I got to be mindful because if I go with the girls and let's just say we go on a losing streak, they might just stay 3 women strong and pick me off. And I don't want to put myself in an unfortunate situation. So I do appreciate he's also thinking that far ahead if they start to slip in challenges.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this last week on the show, but I don't think that should be a huge concern for him. I just feel like, are they really going to lose 3 challenges without, a tribe swap or a merge or something? And even then, if he's super tight with Maria, I feel like you can. I just don't believe in this girls' alliance being like a huge thing. That
Mhm.
I think it's good that he. I think he seems like a smart enough game player. I feel like he is. It's smart that he's verbalizing that, but I don't think it should be a big concern for him. I think he should just go with whichever side makes most sense for him. Strategically in terms of like maybe a longer term alliance that he can kind of lock in. And if it's with the girls, I think that's what he should do, and I think it's what he will do.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I agree with you that they will go with the girls, especially because knowing what we know on the outside, they didn't see 45, but we should predict if they kind of do things back to back, there will be a tribe swap. And after Yanu's been just so bad in the first 2 episodes, I really don't think they're going to lose the Screen Tribe. And even if they did, I do feel like if they lose once, maybe they do get rid of Tim or Ben and they go with the girls, but then I think a swap might be coming. So I feel like either way, Charlie and Maria are in a fine spot either way.
Yeah, I agree. Now, I guess I know what you're referencing with the other scene that was on the show, or was on the show about Siga. Do you want to explain it to the listeners that maybe didn't catch the episode?
Yeah, it basically, and we've talked about this before, Brett, last week with the whole what was it called? The freaking Andy Griffith Alliance, like with the
Mm.
black and white thing. I never mind, like we said last week, I don't mind when they try new things as long as it's quick, doesn't kind of cut too much out, and as long as they don't kind of keep repeating it. And the Andy Griffith thing was a cute one-time little thing with the black and white. They tried it once, great, but I don't want to see it every single time Tevin and Hunter are making moves. Same thing with this week. I was okay with them at first, trying something new with this whole, competition, as long as they don't do it too much in the future. But it also went way too long because I thought what they were going to do was say, like, and to your point, let's just quickly explain it for those who don't know. Ben is a big, he's a musician. He's a big metalhead. So he's like, I can name a bunch of Metallica songs. And Charlie, being the Swiftie, is like, I can name more Taylor Swift songs. So I thought they were going to go back and forth, that we would see like, maybe 10 minutes, a little thing where it's like 10 minutes later, or we see something where it's like, 100 picks later, they went from like 1, 1, 2, 2 to like 70, 70. For them to kind of have this into like a whole 5-minute segment where it was like, you're both at 2, you're both at 20, you're at 50, at 70, you're at 106. I'm like, this is taking so long. And then, Brett, I got even more upset after the episode when I found out what I sent you. We missed out on like 5 to 6 minutes of secret scenes that would have been way better to see than this competition.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is, I suppose, what we were asking for in
Camp
terms of
life,
like
yeah.
camp building, yeah, camp life, not really survival, but I mean, character work. But I'm going to disagree with you. I had a problem with it right away. I didn't
Okay.
like it at all. Didn't like it. Wouldn't have wanted it to be 1 minute, 2 minutes. I thought the whole thing was so goofy. And, I guess they're capitalizing on the Taylor Swift craze. And I think that honestly, I honestly believe that's part of why it made it on to the air, honestly.
Mm.
And because really, even preseason, he's made that a big aspect of his personality that he's a huge Swiftie.
Mhm.
Um, I guess there were people that think it's really like cute and stuff, but as you said, it went way too long. I couldn't believe how long the scene went. And it's like we get the picture here, and it's not really providing us with anything we didn't already know about both of them, and it's not adding anything in terms of strategy.
Mhm.
So I was just and this was again, as you said, this first hour was dragging, and then we get this scene that was never ending about Taylor Swift and Metallica,
Mhm.
and it was just brutal. And yeah, as you said, of course, we're not going to get a scene like this again. They're not going to show. I mean, but who knows? They might do another thing about him loving Taylor Swift. Honestly, I mean, they brought it up preseason so much, so I don't know. I thought this was a horrible scene, and again, this is why I'm saying it was a very weird episode for me. It was 2 hours and it was way too long,
Mhm.
and we'll get into the fact there's only one challenge.
Mm.
Um, but the fact is, like, out of everything you could show us about Siga, this tribe that has seemingly hasn't been a lot of content from this tribe, as you said, there was probably deleted scenes that definitely were more interesting than this. This was just so bizarre.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess we'll talk about that really quickly for those that are curious with the secret scenes, and then we'll jump over to Nami. But yeah, I mean, even though there really has not been anything brand new and interesting with this tribe yet, I would have liked to gotten that secret scene where I'm seeing once again how there is still the guys and the girls working together, but how the girls really pick up that Ben and Tim are a tight duo, but the guys say even though that Mariah and Gemma are a duo, they're a bit more sketched out by Jem because they can't really read her, and she always seems like she's willing to make a move. So I would have just liked to got a bit more clarity on like if they do lose. Yeah, it's going to depend obviously where Charlie and Maria go, but it also may depend on where both pairs want to throw their votes. Like, are the girls going to vote for Tim or Ben? And then now I know the guys would rather vote for Jem over Mariah. So I would have liked to have gotten that rather than this music segment.
Yeah, and ultimately, Jem and Mariah have probably been, I don't know if you would agree, probably the least edited, the most under edited people on the season so far. I mean, Jem, we've gotten almost nothing from.
Yeah.
And really, their only purpose in this scene that they showed was to just comment on, oh, how silly and how goofy, and oh, it's so
Mm-hmm.
funny that they're going back and forth with Metallica and Taylor Swift. And it was like, all right, maybe we can get some character work on these people that we haven't even really met yet on the
Yeah.
edit. So that would have been nicer, but yeah, I guess that's pretty much all we got from Siga this whole episode, right? Because we didn't go back to them after the immunity challenge. We only went back. So we also went back to orange in addition to purple. But we'll get to that.
Yeah, exactly. So that was all we got from green, really.
Mm.
Orange is a tribe where even though I know our main focus has been purple so far, I mean the orange Nami tribe has I feel like it's a lot of interesting stuff, whether they go to tribal or whether they swap with certain people, because it's basically kind of like water boiling where it's gonna boil over really soon with this group, because we get to that beach and Venus is still on the bottom. She's well aware she's on the bottom and no one wants to talk game with her. And even when she goes to look for idols, people follow suit. So our girl Venus Brett is still kind of on the outs here.
She's on the outs. I guess we'll get to her relationship with Randon and sort of whether there's actually any real potential for that to be something. But yeah, I mean, she's a game player, and again, like I said last week about Randon really had the right read on her that she is actually like Parvati-esque in the sense that she seems very kind of ruthless and is very is going to be a strong game player. So she is dangerous, but we'll see if she could sort of squirm her way to a tribe swap or a merge. I think Ryan, I think you would agree that she's someone that if she can make the merge or fit in a tribe a little bit better, get in the right situation after a tribe swap, like she could be a dangerous player. But in this current setup, she is in danger if they go to tribal for sure.
Yeah, so I think if they had, I mean, they obviously were dominating. If they had lost episode 1 and Randon, and we'll get to it in a second, if Randon didn't find his idol and Orange just lost straight out, I feel like she would have easily been the first gone. So, which is why I feel like, to your point, this type of player, if they can just survive their first few votes and they can get themselves insulated at the merge, can go very far and dominate the game, but she has to just survive. Now, if they do lose somehow before a swap, I think she's still in some danger. But now with Randon kind of being an ally and with his idol, maybe they can make something happen. But she just really seems on the outs, and the other four just don't really want to give her the time of day. But Randon here, he finds this beware advantage, which he accepts because 9 out of 10 people will always accept the beware advantage for some reason. And somehow, and as always, they're shocked they lose their vote, even though it happens every time. And it's the same as Tiffany's, where that he can't get the key to the box until he, loses the challenge.
Which is
I want to ask you, what's up?
Which is annoyingly like stupid that it's a stipulation, because you're in no danger because you're going to lose before you go to tribal. So
yeah, I don't see the purpose in it. But I can at least appreciate that it's not some type of like convoluted thing where it's just really simply like you lose, solve this quick little puzzle, and you get it. I mean, I feel like it's not as convoluted as we've seen in the past. But I want to ask you about this, Brett. He finds this beware advantage, and eventually he goes to Venus and tells her about it. And the reason why he picks Venus is because Liz is an annoying wild card, which we know. we've been new on that. Yes. But he observes how Tevin, Hunter, and Soda are in a really tight trio. So I want to ask you is, was this out of all the people he could have picked out of the other 5, was this the right move? If Randon had to tell somebody, which he didn't have to, but if he had to tell somebody, was Venus the right person to tell and try to bring into the fold? And also your thoughts on him picking up on Tevin, Hunter, and Soda being a tight trio.
Yeah, I think it was a much better episode for Randon than the first episode, because we were talking about how he kind of made that misstep. If he had to pick someone, I think it definitely is the right person. I think it is the right move, though, because I think that he definitely was on the outs, and I think he's picking up on the fact that especially Tevin and Soda are very clearly like the leaders of the tribe. And then, if you could pick up on the fact that Tevin and Hunter are also, in the Andy Griffith Alliance, I think that he has to do something. And I think it's the right move to reach out to someone like Venus, because I think that can be a strong player who you could possibly play with. And if you're both clearly on the outs, and you can kind of link up with someone about that and form a relationship based on that, I think it's worth doing. I think it was the right move for him. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a Venus fan. I think it was the right move for him to kind of reach out and try to form something, because they both were in trouble. Although then again, Liz also is so random that I don't think she's really with them, the other 3. Yeah. But I think it's the right move.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. The thing is, like, I mean, I want to give Tevin, Soda, and Hunter credit, because obviously, it's never easy on these 6-person tribes. It can really be a fluke where anything can go wrong in a small tribe. So I want to give them credit for, getting themselves into a position where they have the numbers. But I also don't want to give them credit, Brett, because I feel like the best players don't really like show their cards that early. And I feel also like if you are that tight of a group, you're kind of making it that obvious. Like if you're always spending time together, if you're always, and maybe you would tell me like, well, if the opposition can't do anything about it, then who really cares? But like, if they're being such an outwardly tight group, you're only allowing people to really see how tight you are and try to make a plan against you. Because I just feel like every time I see this group and I see the secret scenes, Venus is on the outs. Tevin and Soda just are kind of being a little snarky to her. They're not giving her the time of day. And you're just making it so obvious that you are a tight group and you might need the opposition to rise up against you. And we even see Randon going to Venus here, and almost kind of like an old school Rob Cesternino thing, where Rob's strategy was to kind of bring in the outsiders. And it's always good to kind of wrangle the people on the bottom. If you can go to Venus and you get that idol, if you lose, you can make something happen. You can take a strike at the trio. So while I want to give the trio credit for getting the numbers, they're not doing a good job of hiding it, which I feel like is going to really put a big target on their back.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, at least from the edit, Hunter is kind of mixing, he's been a little bit lower key. I think it's just that I think someone like Tevin, again, he's an actor, he's a performer, he puts himself out there, and I do think that he might be coming across as, too much of a leader, and kind of thinking who he is in the tribe and his status, and sort of, I think that someone like Venus or people who are on the outs against that kind of player sees Tevin as the one to take a swing at, So that's to get to your point about wrangling the bottom. The question is, who would they go after? And I think if you're Hunter, you're in a better spot. Like, I don't think that they're going to target Hunter. If Venus gets some power, or if they get an idol and they're like, let's take a swing at someone, they're writing Tevin's name down, I think.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to read too much into the secret scenes because I always feel like I never know if they're hiding it for a reason. Like, are they protecting somebody? Or are they hiding it because that someone's a winner? Or are they hiding it because they just ran out of time? Like, I don't want to read into it too much, but what we see in the secret scene is like Venus is like trying to find an in, and Tevin, while I think he's obviously a very social player, is coming off a bit snarky to her, which doesn't really look great. And I do want to give Venus credit, by the way, because Venus even, and this is why I think you saw a potential in her as a player and why I like her too, she's very aware because she even says, like, I didn't click with Tevin right away and I could have done a better job at closing that gap sooner. I kind of waited a little too long and now I'm trying to build a bridge of connection with him and he's just not taking that branch at all. So I give her credit for realizing, like, I could have closed that gap faster. So I hope she can really find some footing here.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I think that she definitely shows like emotional intelligence and social intelligence, but and I think that shows it, as you said, to make that kind of comment in a way that someone like Soda actually isn't really showing that intelligence by doing things like snatching the idol out of her. But I love, we'll get to that, by the way, but I love how that's become a recurring bit, and I so want it to happen again in episode 3. If they win again, I want the same exact thing to happen again, because we'll see the steam coming out of Venus's ears if that happens. But I think that someone like Soda maybe doesn't actually have that same level of social intelligence. And I think that, yeah, that's why, as I said, if Venus can survive, I think that the gameplay instincts are there and the social instincts are there. So hopefully we can see it, because I do want to see her go far.
Yeah, and I think she can go far, and I really feel like if they do lose and Randon can get that idol, they could make a big strike here, because all they would really need is basically, Randon plays the idol on her and then they vote for one of the trio. Or if they don't even play the idol, we could see a scenario where somehow they pull in Liz. I don't think they will, because I just don't know if Randon even likes Liz. But I could see a scenario where the trio goes to Randon and says, hey, Venus is the target, but, we're going to split the votes between her and Liz. And if Venus doesn't play the idol, she goes home. If she does, we'll lose Liz. Who cares? But Venus is the target, Randon. And imagine, I'm not going to invoke the name of Suri Fields and say they can pull off and I'm not going to say they can pull off a 3-2-1, but I would die if somehow the trio wants a 2-2 split between Venus and Liz, and somehow Randon and Venus get Liz on board and they do a 3-2-1. I would lose my mind if that happened.
Yeah, I mean, that would be legendary. I guess we don't want to, taking a quote from Jelinski, that would be legendary, but legendary, I don't think, we'll see. We'll see. I wouldn't, it would be, although I don't want, Venus to be in danger next week. It would be interesting to see. Orange would be very interesting to see them go to tribal. Green, I think we know, would just sort of be a little more standard. So Orange would definitely be a very interesting tribal next week.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, speaking of Orange, I guess we can talk about the challenge. I know we already talked about Yanu pre-challenge with the whole thing with Kenzie and Banu and Jess. Did you have anything else you wanted to bring up before we get to the challenge?
Yeah, no, not much. I mean, I think we've talked about it, but I think everyone on that tribe has kind of had their moments showing that they're not maybe there at the gameplay level that they need to be. I think that both Tiffany and Kenzie and Q have sort of made some missteps in the first 2 episodes, but again, possibly disaster tribe that we're looking at here once again, as you said, in these 3 tribe seasons. So we'll see. Maybe they could turn it around next week and get a challenge win, but it didn't happen this episode.
Yeah, with these 3 tribes, all it takes is one specific challenge, and just don't be last. Like, you could easily be the disaster tribe, but like, you barely come in seconds. Like, so it only takes one little thing for things to go your way. And I think we both would agree that even though Q, Kenzie, and Tiffany have been doing a good job, although not without some missteps, to your point, I think we would rather see players kind of grow and become less flawed rather than just be like the game bots and just be kind of like so oiled and polished right away. I think kind of seeing these players who have the knack for the game kind of develop over time and get better at it. But I guess we'll see.
We will see. So I guess if we look at this this immunity challenge, which went on forever, through a break, through many slow mo editing style passages, but it was a very interesting challenge, I thought, and it was a very difficult challenge for the tribes. Clearly,
So I agree with you where it obviously went way too long and they had to fill the 2 hours somehow. I like the challenge itself though. I think these challenges, whether it's a tribal challenge or a individual challenge, where people are either like stacking something or trying to build something and it can kind of like collapse like a house of cards like right away.
yeah,
It makes it so I think it makes great television because you never know when someone's going to win at the second. Like we see this with like the House of Cards, we see it with the domino challenge in the past. We've seen it in that challenge where you have to hold a rope and keep something like steady on a platform.
right,
Like
right, right.
if you can drop something at any point and start over, it makes it for intense TV because you never know when someone's going to win. So I like the concept of the challenge. It just took too long.
I do like the concept of the challenge. I think it was tricky to kind of, I think, for them just to figure out where to position people, basically, like where was the best use for guys versus women. Um, and yeah, I mean, it was a good challenge, and as you said, you never know when it was all going to collapse. I did. I don't know if you appreciated it. It was like I feel like some meme kind of worthy attention to it, but Mariah and Liz on like the sidelines as they look exactly the same, both like cheering, and Liz just being like just odd, just being strange and cheering on the tribe, but in a weird way. I don't know what to make of her, but they kept going back to them a lot. I feel like no.
I think the show is. I don't know what happened in casting. I think the show has picked up on the joke that they just
Yeah,
look very similar. Like people were almost making like Parent Trap comparisons, like like Lindsay Lohan, like making just that they look so similar. And they're like, oh, I like your glasses. I like your glasses. I like your socks. Like it's
right, right.
so even though like they both are obviously, I know we've said they're a bit quirky and weird in their own ways, Liz and Mariah. I do like the show kind of breaking the fourth wall and being like, no, we've heard you all say they're very similar looking, and we're gonna show you like this one scene where they happen to both sit out and they're just like mirrors of each other.
Yeah, yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I think you have to like they'd be dumb not to show that. It's just such a funny moment, but I did like that. But yeah, so I guess we ultimately obviously have orange wins the challenge. Green comes in second. I guess purple really didn't. I don't know. Were they close to real? Were they really close to ever getting it in the challenge? I don't know. Somewhat, but
They were. I think at one point or another, every single tribe was at least in the word persistence or whatever the word was. They were all like one letter away, and then like the thing just crumbled because they couldn't get that piece in. So purple was close at one point. I just think they just really were just weaker than the other tribes. Again, I said this earlier, they could have really used Jelinski's like 7-foot wingspan. No, they just were struggling, and we even saw Banu like scream at Jess.
yeah, I was gonna say a big thing is after the challenge, like Banu loses his mind, yells at Jess, and I felt bad because I feel like Jess she was put like in like the middle
Yeah.
of the arch, and like she's just not tall enough to do. I feel like they could have moved people. That's what I'm saying. It was very much about where to position people on the arch, and felt bad for her. But Banu just again very very erratic. Even there was very over the top, and then we saw Tiffany crying as well. So a lot of emotions bubbling over for Purple after that loss again.
Yeah, and we've seen this even like before. I remember this, back in the old days. I mean, we mentioned Gabon earlier. I remember like famously Crystal Cox, Olympic athletes, was
Yeah,
crying after a challenge, and Jeff was like, "Crystal, why are you crying?" And Crystal's just like, it just sucks when you lose like over and over and over again. And even though like as competitors, I feel like we would say like, we don't want to see the crying. It's just like I guess like I can't imagine myself being out there like just so deprived and hungry and tired and everything. It's like to not only be surviving out there, but then just to get your ass kicked every single challenge really has to hurt. So like, yeah, I mean, again, the crying was a little bit much, but like obviously I could see why they were just so frustrated at this point.
Yeah, for sure. And so I guess that's why. What should we do? Do you want to jump into the Orange Tribe post challenge, or should we just go straight to Yanu?
No, we can quickly go to Nami because after we leave Nami, we spend the rest of the episode at Yanu, and then we
Yeah.
can kind of wrap up. But like you kind of hinted at earlier, and like you said, I love this storyline through 2 episodes. Like every time Jeff goes to like give Venus the idol, like Soda tries to snatch it away. It happened the first
Well, she
week.
does snatch it away, right? Didn't she? She actually the first week she actually took it.
The first week she actually took it, and Venus was pissed off. Then this week she tried. Venus was like, "No, you're not going to do it." And then you even hear Random behind her, Random being like, "Good, don't let her take it from you." So I kind of like to see that growth in that thing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there you go. You know, there's long-term storytelling right there, week to
Yeah.
week, about how the progression of Soda. I feel like it's funny. I'm sure years from now, assuming that she doesn't win or anything, like Soda will be best remembered for trying to take the idols from Venus in these challenges. It's so strange. I don't know, but yeah. Then we see in that scene, I guess, Venus just saying that like they ran over her toe in the competition or in the challenge, and you know that no one's listening to her, and she's getting frustrated. And then we see Tevin say that he is getting frustrated by her. So, as you said, like it's really this tribe, it's boiling over. Where honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. And I know we don't see arguments anymore. We don't see people getting yelling at each other. But I would not be surprised if we see something kind of blow over between Tevin and Venus soon.
I would not be surprised. It also would not surprise me if somehow Venus survives. She makes a move against one of the trio, and then Tevin and her get into an argument. I could easily see that because we see at the end of that scene, she's even like, whether it's a swap or a merge, I'm flipping on these losers. Like she's out. She is not sticking with this. Maybe Randon. She's not sticking with these other 4 at all. So for the trio's sake, they better hope if there is a swap in like episode 4 or 5, they better hope they don't be on a tribe with Venus because she's gonna flip the second she can, and for
Yeah,
good reason. And for good reason.
yeah. No, I mean, she was placed in a situation, and look, I mean, I think that she comes across as, I don't know, she can come across as like a little like petulant, like a little bit, you know, she's like younger, like maybe like whiny or something to like these more older, like mature kind of people. But I think that, you know, look, she's been placed in a tough position and she knows where she's at this point. So I feel like, yeah, I mean, if I was her, like, why would you not be like, I'm a free agent. I'm willing to, I don't care about these people, you know. I think that's the right mentality for her to have right now, because they've been trying to get rid of her from the day one, and she's, you know, she's been picking up on that.
And they will continue to do it because it would not surprise me if, let's just say, this tribe never loses and they go to the merge. I could see a scenario where like green and purple try to team up against orange, and then orange is like, we got to get rid of somebody. Oh, you guys can have Venus here. We can get rid of her.
Right.
We'll placate you. We'll get rid of an orange tonight. We'll get rid of Venus. So she's not safe even when she gets to the merge, because I could still see people trying to use her as like a scapegoat. So you're right. She's completely fair to try to flip on them. But that's also where I blame the Alliance, because we've seen this in the past with like Jatia. We saw this with like Cass and Sarah. You never let the person on the bottom know that they're on the bottom.
Yeah. And I think that's where we're at with Orange right now. So we'll see what happens next episode. But would be very interesting to go to Tribal, but we'll see.
I would love to see it. So at Purple, where we spend the rest of the episode at Yanu, and then I do want to talk about that Tribal Council as well, because that was crazy. Brett, Jeff kind of hinted at this in his podcast, which I to be honest, I have not listened to the On Fire podcast with Jeff Probst, the official podcast. I have seen like clips here and there, and the clip that I saw was him saying, or kind of hinting at this episode, like players are starting to now, through 6 seasons of Shot in the Dark, people are starting to like not break the game, but they're starting to like work around the game, which is kind of what they wanted to see. Like people evolve their strategy based on the new concepts. Because now we've seen something we've never seen before, and you can keep me honest if I forgot about this. The first time in the new era, people are now making fake idols for somebody to find so they don't play their Shot in the Dark. We saw it in 44. A lot of people made fake idols, but I don't think I've ever seen somebody say in the new era, I'm making a fake idol for Jess or for this person because I don't want them to play Shot in the Dark.
I think it's the first time, as far as I can remember. Again, I think you're the historian, so you know better than me. But yeah, it's weird that it's kind of taken on the role of an idol almost, right? Like shot in the dark. But you know what? Honestly, if I was, and I get that there's like, it's 1 in 6, right?
Yeah.
1 in 6. In my opinion, if I'm like if I'm in the majority alliance and we're voting someone out, to me, I don't even care about them playing Charlotte Dark. Like to me, it's not worth going through the trouble of trying to figure out how to navigate that because it's 1 in 6 chance.
Yeah.
They're very likely to not get it or have it hit. If they do, then you say, well, I got screwed over in the game and you move on. But it's where we're seeing like this very convoluted scheme to try to have her not do the shot in the dark. And maybe it did work. I mean, she didn't play it. She didn't go for it. But to me, it's overdoing it, and it felt like I don't know a very forced, unnecessary thing for them to try to do this fake idol scheme just to prevent her from doing shot in the dark. Just my opinion.
I agree. I just don't think it was necessary because why can't you, as an alliance, why can't you just go to her and say we're writing down Banu? Now maybe it's because Banu is too emotional and you don't want to put his name out there because we saw what happened.
Yeah.
But like, why can't you just tell her the plan is Banu, and then you tell Banu like, hey, Jess is Jess is going to vote for you, so we're all voting for Jess tonight, and then Banu will say sure, because even if she plays her shot in the dark and it hits, Banu's gone. And
Yeah.
unless they were worried about like him being emotional or they don't want to lose him for challenges, like this whole fake idol song and dance, I feel like you could have just told each of them to vote for each other.
Yeah. I mean, Banu is so crazy that you don't know what you're getting there, but yeah, it does seem very unnecessary, especially just if you can get her to vote for Banu, then great. And look, if it's a 1 in a million chance where because Jess seems like she doesn't know what's going on, where she'll vote for someone in the main alliance and she plays her shot in the dark and it happens to hit. I mean, I think at that point you have to just, shrug it off. I mean, what are you gonna at that point it is what it is. I think this was so unnecessary. And now, yeah, I mean, look, because shot in the dark it's always there. I mean, do you have to do every week where we have to get a fake idol sort of scheme because you have to do this every I don't know.
I mean, you were right though. Like it's a 1 in 6 chance. There's a reason why we've seen it being played. I should have looked this up before the podcast. We saw it played, I think, in total like 6 or 7 times so far in the new era, and obviously it's only hit once. So like it's really not going to work. And I think you're right. I don't think we're going to see this every week, like people making fake idols, but like, I just feel like it's a little bit overplaying because I feel like it could also backfire on you. Although, by the way, with this fake idol, I mean, clearly Jess even picked up on the fact that like, is it even real? Because she noticed like it had the beads from the torch. Right. I do want to give Q credit here. Q did something that I didn't even pick up on that somebody said on Twitter that I wanted to recognize, and I forgot who it was, but when Jess goes to him and says like, "Is this even real, Q?" I feel like a bad player would have tried to been like, "Oh no, it's real. I promise it's real. I promise it's real," and I feel like it could have come off kind of very like deflective. I feel like Q said the best thing in that moment, Brett. You remember what Q said?
I actually don't remember. I was going to say I don't remember.
Q was like, if you don't think it's real, give it back. I'm trying to help you out. I'm giving you an idol, Jess, because I think Kenzie should go. Whether that was real or not, clearly wasn't real. But like, I want Kenzie gone. I'm giving you this idol to help you, Jess, as a sign of trust. If you don't think it's real, give it back. And I feel like if I heard that, if I was Jess, I'd be like, oh shit, maybe it is real if he's asking for it back, right?
Yeah, I guess then at that point you're going to be like, well, I'm going to keep it regardless. But no, I guess you're right that in the moment that was a very smart thing for Q to say. And I guess we didn't talk about that whole scene though of them trying to have her find the idol.
So funny.
That was a funny scene, and that's where I was talking about when I was like, she really was like walking around like a zombie, just missing that. Like she literally can't even find an idol that's right in front of her face. Basically, it was a funny scene, but again, I sort of felt bad for Jess. Just even the edit of her was just just complete cluelessness,
And Wednesday, that episode was her birthday. So I mean, like, so that was unfortunate to see like her she can't find it, and Tiffany and Kenzie are like laughing in the trees, like she's not finding this Q. You have to physically go give it to her. I will say, and we can also, I want to get your thoughts on this too. Like, I know Jeff made the whole villains comment, which we broke down in the first episode, but like, do you think Jeff was like saying that in response to this season? Because I feel like so far, not like on the level of like Russell and like the old school villains that we love, but like, I mean, with some of these little things that we're seeing with Tevin and Soda against Venus, and now with the alliance against Jess, people are kind of acting like, you know, petty villains in some ways. And I thought it was actually kind of entertaining and refreshing to see people being like kind of devious to each other, honestly.
Yeah, devious and maybe even just I don't know, kind of like cutting and like disrespectful, even like the
Yeah.
Soda kind of thing towards Venus, right? And they're highlighting it. Yeah, like it's luckily not like uncomfortable drama like we've had
No,
in the past, like worlds apart, like uncomfortable kind of stuff. But yeah, I guess like they are showing people kind of being a little bit, you know, selfish,
mean-spirited.
Yeah, mean-spirited. Yeah, mean-spirited sort of like, you know, comments and jokes. And yeah, I guess I appreciate that them putting that in the edit. I think it seems like a reasonable depiction of some of the people. So.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about, even though it didn't end up mattering before we get to Tribal, is Q says to Jess, like, I will vote with you and Banu to get out Kenzie tonight, but I don't want to leave Tiffany out. And you know, at first I was like, oh, well, that's kind of smart because Q doesn't want to like blindside his number one ally if this actually was true. But I feel like on the other hand, if I was Jess or Banu, all that would tell me is like, well, then so you know, Tiff really is like your number one and you guys are really tight if you don't want to leave her out of a vote. Because if you really weren't like in lockstep with her, you wouldn't mind leaving her out of a vote. But if you're telling me I will not make this move without her support, just shows the bond you have. So I want to get your perspective on like, was that kind of like smart of Q to kind of outwardly be like, I won't do this without Tiff? Or do you feel like it was kind of a misstep on his part?
I think it was smart. I do, because I think, I don't know, especially, but again, when you have to consider who you're working with, you know, for Q to make that kind of move with Banu and Jess, especially Banu being so crazy and not knowing what he's going to do, you know, it's a very committal move for Q if he takes out Kenzie and leaves Tiffany out. Very committal, and he's going to lose. He is probably going to lose Tiffany as a major ally for the rest of the game. So I think I think that Q is right there to basically not just want to join with the two outsiders who are completely untrustworthy and seem like bad players.
Yeah.
It would have been way too committal for him to do it without getting Tiffany's support. So I agree with him. What do you think?
I agree. I mean, whether or not people read into that with how tight they are is one thing, but I think you're right where it's like, you know, people, you can't just make moves willy-nilly. Like Jeff always says, make big moves, but it's like if you are leaving key alliance members out of these moves, you're just really going to isolate them and make them not want to trust you going forward. So I can respect Q, and I think we both are pretty high on Q, you know, 2 episodes in, but like he clearly has a good knack for the game where he's even realizing like, I may not even decide to vote Kenzie. I think Jess is the better move tonight because she's not helping us in challenges. But if I do vote Kenzie, I'm not going to risk, you know, I'm not going to risk leaving Tiff out because she not only may she not want to work with me, you could end up getting Tiffany being very spiteful and being like next week, okay, what if I rope in Jess and Banu and vote you Q out? So like, I appreciate Q trying to like cover his bases a bit.
Yeah, for sure. I think he's definitely a strong player. I like what I've seen of him so far.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, again, in a very tough situation because that tribe is such a mess. It's always weird kind of looking at people who you think are probably good players on a disaster tribe. And we've seen examples of that with like really, you know, obviously atrocious tribes, but have very good players in it. And, you know, I think that it's frustrating. And I think for someone like Q and Tiffany, who seem like pretty good players and very strong in challenges, like the last thing they thought was going to happen going on Survivor was them being on a tribe of lunatics and bad game players and bad, you know, not strong in challenges, etc. Like they did not think this was going to happen, so they having to navigate it, and it's not easy.
It's not easy to navigate, especially when you have someone like Banu on your tribe. I guess last thing we could talk about, then we could wrap it up because we're trying to keep it a bit tighter tonight, is Banu at Tribal Brett. I, like you, thought the whole Kenzie thing was a red herring the whole time. But
Yeah.
I will admit to you, I thought Jess was going up until Tribal, and then I fully got duped. I thought for sure Banu was talking himself out of the game. I thought when they were whispering, Tiff and Q, I thought they were going to call an audible and be like, do you remember like Ho Wrong? Do you remember when what was her name? Jennifer? When Jennifer kind of went a little bit nuts at Tribal
Yes.
Council,
Yes.
and Scott and Jason were like, all right, she's got to go. Even though we hate Alicia, like Jennifer's got to go.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I legitimately thought they were going to call an audible like Scott and Jason did, and we're like, okay, let's just get rid of Banu right now because we can't trust him. What did you think?
I don't think I ever fully thought that Banu was going to go. But it definitely was like he's possibly talking himself into it. Like I was pretty sure like Jess is probably going to go. But then, yeah, as you said, like he was possibly going to talk himself into it because it was just so crazy. And even like Q telling him to like explaining to him like the strategy of Survivor that sometimes you need to shut your mouth. And like that, he was basically explaining to him like you are going to be a liability for us going forward because you can't like just keep anything quiet at Tribal.
What did Tiff say to him? Tiff's like, don't get the seat hot.
Yeah. And also, I recently, just before we went on air, I skimmed through the episode just to remember everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I was watching this, and at the end, you realize that because Jeff questions Banu, and he goes, "Well, it happened last week, and now it's happening again, or last episode, last Tribal." And you're saying that you have connections with everyone else, so obviously you're saying to vote Jess. And then he goes, but what he said, like, I also formed a connection with Jess yesterday or something.
Yeah.
It was like, what are you talking about? Like, it was just, I feel bad as well, sort of, for Banu because I think that there is maybe a cultural sort of thing going on here, but he also is just so over the top, and it's, yeah, I mean, look, he's not going to win the game. I think we know he's not winning. He's never going to win the game.
You never know. I mean, I don't think so.
This
you never
is
know.
So over. It's so insane.
I think the main lesson that I took away from this, and this is also why I listened to the podcast that Rob did, where he spoke to Jam Jam. I think a player can be emotional. I think we saw 2 seasons ago how Jam Jam and Carolyn both did well with their emotions, and Jam Jam was a pretty good social winner. But I think like Jeff and Q were saying in this episode, it's fine to have emotions. You just have to be able to control them, and you can't get too emotional to the point where you're now giving out information, because it's bad enough you're doing it in this tribe where you can lose your allies. You can really cost them their own game and them get sent out if you do this at merge. Like what if Banu slips at the merge and is like, oh, I love Kenzie, Tiff, and Q, but I always feel like I'm on the outs because they're so tight. Like you could really sink their games, and they may not even vote for you if you get to the end. So you can't be too emotional with information.
And that's why, as you said, legitimately, I think they had to consider it to get rid of him. That's what I was saying earlier on when you asked the big question at the beginning of was it the right move? I mean, if I were them, I would have gotten rid of Banu because it's just he's too much of a liability going forward. And as Q said, it doesn't matter now. So to the 3 right now, who cares because they have the numbers anyway. So but like going forward, yeah, as you said, like at a merge situation, and if you want to stay together as a tribe, this guy you cannot rely on. There's no way that you can ever rely on him.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if whether they lose next week and or they have a tribe swap if Banu's not a sacrifice in the next few episodes.
Yeah. So I guess do you want to kind of preview next episode, or we'll give our thoughts about what was your, wrapping up this episode too, what were your big takeaways? Maybe a standout sort of edit or standout player of the episode, and like big picture stuff.
Big picture stuff. Episode took too long. Glad we're going back to 90 minutes next week. I still have the impression especially after last season started really slow with 2 bad episodes. I still think there's potential for the season. I think there are some promising stuff with the whole Venus saga, with this Purple Alliance. Green's a little snoozy right now, but I think the purple and orange characters have a lot of potential. So I think big picture, long episode, but I think there's some good stuff here. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, 2 hours is way too long. As I said, the Taylor Swift inclusion was a little bit too much for me. Would have appreciated a little bit more, another challenge or something to kind of keep things moving. But yeah, I think we mostly agree on the tribes. Like green is kind of snoozy right now, but purple and orange definitely have interesting dynamics going on. And I just think we are getting a very messy season. I think, and some people really like that, and some people don't. I think if you want the quality of gameplay of a Winners at War or Cambodia or something, like you're not going to get that level of gameplay. But we might see some very interesting storylines and characters emerge in this season. But as you said, I think it's probably it's starting about maybe the same for me as last season or the year before, or well, definitely for 44. As you said, last season was not great at the beginning, but there is potential for the season. And as you said, this was just a little bit too long of an episode for me.
Yeah. Let me ask you one last question, and then we'll get out of here. Previewing next week, if each tribe loses, who do you think, if you could name one person from each tribe that is in the most danger of going out, what do you think?
I think purple, it's got to be Banu. I can't see anything else but him going, because, I mean, maybe if Kenzie notices something and wants to team up with him to save herself, or if she feels like she's in danger, but I think 90% he would go. Orange, of course, I mean, I think Venus would be the most in danger, but I think maybe she could weasel her way out of it. But I do think that she would be the most in danger. And then green, very tough to say based on the edit. But as I said, I think Charlie will go with the girls. So I think maybe, what's his name? Tim. Forgot his name. Tim. I think Tim might have a chance of going. He hasn't really been getting much of an edit yet. And yeah, I guess maybe if it has to be him or Ben, I think maybe Charlie has this Taylor Swift and Metallica connection with Ben. So I guess I would say Tim.
I agree. I would say purple Banu. I think green Tim. Orange I think is interesting because if it wasn't for Randon maybe getting an idol if they lose, I would say I think Venus is the most likely to go next week if Orange loses. But if they do lose and Randon can get that idol like Tiff did, I would not be surprised, and maybe this is a bold claim, if one of the trio goes out. I think Tevin's too big of a narrator to go, but it would not surprise me at all, actually, if they lost and Randon gets the idol, if like Soda or Hunter could get clipped. But we'll see.
Something like, yeah, like an idling out like Soda or something would be a pretty epic tribal.
Yeah. I guess we'll see.
We will see. But I mean, yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, well, you know what? The good thing is we're making this podcast, and now it's 2 days away. So right around the corner.
We don't have to wait that long. But thank you, Brett, once again for stepping in. It's always fun to chat Survivor with you.
Always fun. We'll see. I guess we'll see whether Dylan's schedule aligns for next week. But, maybe I'll come off the bench at some point later this season. We'll see.
Yeah, no, we will definitely keep in touch. I have a feeling over the next couple of weeks, I feel like we'll have another one of these. But I guess we'll see what happens.
Sounds good.
All right. But thank you, everyone, for joining us. I saw we had actually a good amount of people watching concurrently live at one point. So thank you all for tuning in. But other than that, we'll see you hopefully soon for episode 3. And as always, grab your torches and head back to camp. Good night.